Welcome to the first video of the flipped classroom. Make sure that you have your note packet out and you're following along as we go. And don't forget to answer the summary questions as well as any questions you might have at the end of this video on Schoology. Remember, that is your new homework score. You can see what our goals are for today. We're going to use solving systems of linear equations to actually answer questions about the real world and do some word problems today. Remember that there are three methods to solve systems of linear equations. We have graphing, substitution, and elimination. Now, your book says linear combinations. We use elimination as our word. Make sure if you're stuck on this and you don't remember those methods really well, you go back and look at your notes or look at your book in chapter 7, I believe is where it's at. Now, our first question has to do with money. Let's say that I have a jar full of pennies and nickels that I've found on the ground at school over a period of time, and I've just put them all in this big jar. And the jar itself has $530 in it. And you also know that there are 230 coins in it after I count how many coins there are in this jar. My question is, how many of each type of coin are there? Well, what are the two types of coins I have in this problem? Pennies and nickels. So if I have to define some variables for this equation, the things I want to know are how many pennies are there? So how many pennies? Next thing I want to know are how many nickels. Notice I use N and P to help remind myself what these variables stand for. Now we use the information that we have in this problem to write the equations. You'll see that the first information I have is there are $5.30 worth of money or coins in this jar. So if I had to write an equation that involved this information, I know that $5.30 has to equal the value of the coins inside. Now, how much are pennies worth in terms of dollars? Well, if you went to the grocery store, you know that when it rings up on the till, it shows up as 0.01 or 1 cent. And I'd multiply that by the number of pennies I have. How much are nickels worth? Well, they're worth 5 cents. So 0.05 is what I multiply by. And that's the first equation I have. This equation tells me the value of the money that I have in the jar. I would take all the pennies I have, multiply by 1 cent. All the nickels I have, multiply by 5 cents. Now, if you look at the second piece of information I have, there are 230 coins in the jar. That means if I take how many pennies I have and how many nickels I have, and I just add them together, P plus N, that would equal 230 coins. Now, you have to make a decision once we have these equations written down, which method you'd like to use to solve for N and for P. Now, if you look at the bottom equation in purple here, this one, it's pretty easy. It's simple. It'd be very easy to solve. In fact, it just takes one step to solve for one of the variables. And I'm going to solve for P here. So 230 minus N has to equal P. And once I've solved for a variable, remember that the easiest thing to do now is to use substitution. Plug it in for P into the other equation right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take $5.30 equal to 0.01. And instead of P, I'm going to put in the 230 minus N. And I'll finish writing the rest of the equation, 0.05 N. Looks like I got a little bit too close, so I'm going to scoot this other stuff over here. It looks like I'm going to have to rewrite it anyway. That's fine. So 0.05 N. Now, I need to distribute out the 0.01 times the 230 and times the N. So I have 530 cents, or $5.30. 0.01 times 230 is 2.30 minus 0.01 N. Don't forget to distribute to that other one, the negative N, plus 0.05 N. Now don't be afraid of these equations because they have decimals in them. They're just like other equations. In fact, I'll go ahead and first solve by subtracting 230 from both sides. I want to subtract $2.30 from both sides. That's going to leave me with $3 on this side. And if I combine 0.01N and 0.05N, that leaves just positive 0.04N. All right. What's our last step? Well, Just divide by 0.04 on both sides of the equation. And that should tell us how many, what? Nickels we have. So 300, oops, one too many zeros, divided by 0.04 is equal to, seems like we got a problem there. What was my problem? I typed in without the decimal, 3.00 divided by 0.04. 75. So I know that n is 75. What does that mean? Well, n is how many nickels there were, so there are 75 nickels, so I'm going to write that down. There are 75 nickels. How many pennies are there? Well, you know that pennies is 230 minus n, so I would take 230 minus the 75, and I'll find out how many pennies are in there. So 230 minus 75, I'm going to use my calculator just to make sure I don't mess up. 155 pennies. And we're done. Make sure to write your answers a complete sentence. If you're curious whether you did something right, you always plug these values back into one of these equations and see if you got the right answer. If I'm going too fast, make sure you can rewind and rewatch the video. Let's look at the next question. Mr. Lovelace tells you that next week's test is worth 71 points and contains 20 problems. Each problem is either worth 3 points or 4 points. Because you are studying systems of linear equations, I will give you extra credit if you can figure out how many problems of each value there are on the test. How many of each question are there? Again, in these word problems, you want to identify what the question is asking you. How many of each type of question are there? Well, there are two types of questions. The first type of question I'll call X, and they're worth 3 points. So X will be how many 3-point questions there are. And let's let Y equal how many 4-point questions there are. Okay, now let's think about what we have in our situation here. We know it's worth 71 points. How much are the X worth? 3. So to find out how many points I get just from the X questions, I'd have to multiply how many X questions I have by 3. So the first equation would be 3 times the number of 3-point questions plus 4 times the number of 4-point questions. And what's that total up to be when I'm done adding up all the points? 71. The other thing I know about this test is that when I add the two numbers of questions together, how many questions are there on the test? 20. So if I take X plus Y and equal 20, I should be done. Okay, those are my two questions, or two equations, excuse me. Now I need to solve this for X and Y to find out how many there are. Now they're stacked really nicely like this, so it might be good to use elimination. I want to eliminate the X variable. You could eliminate the Y if you'd like, but I'm going to eliminate X. I want the X's to be opposite. Right now, this X has a 1 on it. So I'm going to multiply this equation so it's the opposite of positive 3. So I'll multiply by negative 3. My equation becomes negative 3x minus 3y equals, and don't forget to multiply this 20. I have to multiply everything by negative 3. So negative 60. Now let's look at my top equation again. It was 3x plus 4y equals 71. And now what I can do is just add these two equations together. And so I need to scroll down here to get myself some more room. I'll add these together. Looks like these go away. And y is equal to 71 minus 60, 11. 4 minus 3 is 1. 71 minus 60 is 11. What does that tell me? There are 11 4-point questions. There are 11 4-point questions. How many of the other type are there? Well, you know, together they make 20. So if there are 11 4-point questions, 20 minus 11 would be 9. So, and 9 3-point questions. If I want to check whether my answer is correct, go ahead and plug them in and see if it ends up to be 71 when you plug in 11 and 9 in for X and for Y. If you're going to buy yogurt, you know if you've been to Tutti Frutti or Cherry Berry, you have to choose your flavor, put the stuff in there, and they weigh it and tell you how much it costs. Let's say your toppings cost 75 cents per ounce and the yogurt costs 50 cents per ounce. I paid $6.75 the last time I went to Tutti Frutti. I want to know how many ounces of yogurt and how many ounces of toppings. Those are going to be my two variables. It's as easy as that. So let's do Y for yogurt. Let's do T. I'll make my T with a little tail on it for toppings. Again, these are both measured in ounces. And I know that together that it costs 75 cents per ounce of yogurt, or sorry, toppings. So I know 0.75 for toppings plus 50 cents per ounce of yogurt. And it ended up costing me $6.75 for everything. Now I had 12 ounces. Look at it, says 12 ounces here. 12 ounces of yogurt. So if I add the two amounts together, Y plus T, so the two together combined weighed 12. All right. So what I can do now is I can multiply to get opposites again. I'm going to use elimination one more time. So I want the y's to go away. So I'm going to multiply this entire equation by negative 0.50. And that's going to give me negative 0.5y minus 0.5t. And then 12 times negative 0.5 is negative 6, negative 1/2. If I stack the original equation back on top of it, I have 0.50y plus 0.75t equals 6.75. Don't forget there's a 0 there. So when I add these together, that goes away. 75 cents minus 50 cents is 25 cents. Toppings, 6.75 minus 6 is just 75 cents. It's easy to see that toppings are 3 ounces. So if it's 12 total ounces minus the 3 ounces from toppings, that means 9 yogurt ounces. Okay, so my sentence would be, there are 9 ounces of yogurt and 3 ounces of toppings. All right, last one. A chemist needs to make 30 ounces of a 25% alcohol solution by mixing together a 15% alcohol solution and a 40% alcohol solution. How many ounces of each solution should I use? At this point, you should be pretty quick at setting these up. There are two types of solutions. There's a 40% and there is a 15%. So let's let X be equal to the 40% ounces, and let's let Y equal 15% ounces. So we know together, when I add just X and Y together, how many ounces do I need when I'm done? 30. The other information I know is I have the X is worth 40% solution, so 40% of whatever X is alcohol, plus 10% of whatever, sorry, 15%, excuse me, misspoke there, 15% of the alcohol in Y, and then I need 15% of this 30 ounces, or 25% of this 30 ounces to be alcohol. So let's talk about that quick, because I'm sure that this is a little confusing. So basically, I got these numbers from the percentage of alcohol that's in them. So since X is 40%, I know 40% of the X ounces is alcohol, because that's the concentration right here. And I know that 15% of the Y solution is alcohol, and I want 25% of my 30 ounces to be alcohol. I'm going to use some video editing magic here to get the solution, and you can look at it and pause it and find out how I did this problem. So just give me a second here. See that the finished equations are down below. I'm going to scroll down here so you can look at that. It ended up that there was 12 ounces of the 40% solution and 18 ounces of the 15%. Don't forget to write your summaries. Have a good weekend.